What's up YouTube? I'm Valentin the Mad, and this is a Gore review of Wolfenstein The New Order. Wolfenstein The New Order is one of the most requested games for a review on the channel. It is also confirmed that a sequel was in the making, so I figured now would be a good time to review The New Order, see what it got right and what could be improved. So how gore is the game? Let's find out. I'll be reviewing every aspect of the game's gore effects, and the score will be set based on 4 categories: body damage, environment, animations and sounds, the feel. Each limb has 2 points of amputation, the head can be destroyed, and characters can be obliterated. As for the looks, you'll see the bone, the muscle, and some blood around the point of amputation. Overall, it's not bad, but the game could use some more of that blood to make things messier. I also wanna mention that one of the arm variations will take off a chunk of the torso, however, that does not look very good. You'll see a very clean slice when it should have been torn violently. And as for explosives, you'll see the character vanish and turn into a bunch of bloodstains and generic pieces. While the looks are by no means great and the aftermath should have been much messier, my main issue is that the explosions are simply not powerful enough to justify such a response. An explosion that does not damage you when you're 7 meters away should not be able to completely vaporize a person, leaving only a bunch of small remains. And if you're still not convinced that the game activates this effect way too often, I wanna present the laser gun. Shot number 1 barely moves him. Shot number 2 kind of makes him stumble. But apparently, shot number 3 can cause death. The result of this very liberal activation is that the response simply feels cheap as hell. So what's the solution? Mutilation rather than obliteration. Extremely gory variations of the characters for explosives, similar to what we have in Left 4 Dead 2, and chunks of the body torn off for the laser gun, similar to what we have in Doom. As for the non-dismembering responses, you have the hole variations and the generic damage texture. Hole variations are a feature I'm always happy to see, and they look fairly gory in the New Order. However, you only have 3 variations, 1 for each side and 1 for the chest. So no, you do not have variations mapped all over the torso. The other non-dismembering response is the generic damage texture that will be activated if the hit is not strong enough to dismember or blow a hole in the character. As I mentioned in many previous reviews, a generic damage texture is the worst possible non-dismembering response. The reason is that every single dead character will look the same no matter where or how you hit him. Instead of seeing bloody wounds at the point of impact and potentially seeing gear get damaged and destroyed, you'll see exactly the same thing every single time. And no, dividing the lousy response into 6 areas does not make it interesting. As for the post-death mutilation, you can activate the generic damage texture, however the dismemberment and the variations cannot be activated after the character dies. The game features executions, however, it is a great example of how not to do them. The character will die immediately and won't be wiggling on the ground. You'll not see any body damage. And there will be no blood spitting at all. No blood gushing from a slashed throat and no puddling below the character. And of course, you have the bullet sponges. The characters will actually have several degrees of bullet sponginess, from armored enemies who can take 2 or 3 magazines, to full-blown bosses, fighting whom is a complete pain in the ass. The one thing they all have in common is the very lacking response on the receiving end. At best, you'll see some parts fly off towards the end of the fight, but that's about it. Even though I'm not a fan of science fiction, I would absolutely love tearing massive robots apart if we would see the appropriate response for the hits. From small parts being blown off, to the possible loss of metallic limbs, to huge chunks of the robot getting destroyed. I'm still waiting for a game that will make fights with large characters an exciting and a responsive experience. but until it happens, I think it's best to avoid bullet sponges altogether. You have respawn stains on impact, and some extra stains for dismemberment. The looks are fairly generic, but they'll deliver a basic response. The issue would be the functionality. For non-dismembering gunfire, you'll see stains only if there is a surface right behind the character. If there is nothing, you won't see any stains. It's not only a matter of respawn stains. There are no mechanics of blood trails or blood pools, so you'll frequently see dead characters lying on a clean surface. When that's what we have, I was very surprised to see that the spinning mechanics for dismembering hits are actually not bad at all. Stains will be spawned on the blood fountain effect, and you'll see stains where the bits land, which delivers a nice and messy result. However, the stains will often be spawned right under the stump and not where the fountain effect goes, so you will see that fountain spilling and not staining the surface. Should be noted that the game will spawn stains when the variations are activated, which makes me wonder, why don't we have a similar response for the other hits too? Simply spawning stains around the character every time you see a blood puff, regardless of whether there is a surface right behind them. Now how's the mess in the long term? Bits and pieces will disappear in 20 seconds. You have a threshold of 10 dead bodies, and the threshold for maximum blood stains is not very high too. The mess won't disappear immediately, but you still won't be able to see the full aftermath of most fights. You have response animations on impact, a disabled state, and death animations. The response animations are very short, but some have more weight to them. The issue is that after those animations, the character will keep fighting as though nothing happened, until the health bar will drain, you'll see a short animation, and he'll die. Well, how about the disabled state mechanic? It's there, but it will be activated only on leg shots. As you can see, shots anywhere else will simply be shrugged off. Generally speaking, location-specific responses are good. However, they are good only if you have a large variety of possible reactions and changes of behavior for different types of wounds. We don't have that in the New Order, so for this game it would be much better to activate the disabled state on a damage threshold. The response sounds for executions and melee attacks are very mild, however the impact sounds for dismembering hits are better, and you'll hear a fairly gory pop. What is missing is the sound of blood being spewed for the fountain. As for the characters, they'll react to a hit, on death, and will comment during the fight. The hit and death reactions are not too bad, however I do think they should have been somewhat longer. And as for the comments, characters will comment in German, rather than in English with an accent, which is awesome. So how does the whole thing come together? The dismemberment is not bad by the damage and blood spilling wise. If you happen to shoot an area that has a gory variation, you'll get a very cool response. The disabled state also looks nice. However, if your hit does not activate the dismemberment or the variations, the body damage responses are absolutely terrible. The blood spilling does not deliver, and you often see dead characters lying on a clean surface. And as for the animations and sounds, the responses are very basic, and for the most part, they're not interesting. You won't see characters lying in pain, screaming, and holding a stump where they used to have a limb. The gore system of the New Order has several nice things going for it, but in the bottom line, it does not feel responsive. So the score for body damage is 11 out of 30. The score for environment is 11 out of 30. The score for animations and sounds is 15 out of 30. I give the feel a score of 4 out of 10. So this gives the gore system of Wolfenstein the New Order a score of 41 out of 100. A science fiction game like the New Order has a lot of potential for some really interesting and creative response mechanics. However, in certain aspects, the game does not deliver even a basic response. I hope that will be changed in the sequel. The New Order is a solid shooter, and the one thing that's really missing for me is proper response on the receiving end. That's it for today. Let me know how you feel in the comment section, and if you liked the video, subscribe and share it around. If you like the content and you want to support the channel, the Patreon link is in the description below. Until next time.